You're listening to the Business Marketing Show, episode number 56. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher.
Welcome to the Business Marketing Show. I'm Brendan. I'm here with my co-host, Ed. Good morning, Ed. How are you?
Hey, Brendan. How are you this morning?
Good. So today we're doing another blueprint episode. I guess this one's a bit more, well, I'm not going to say looser than the other one, but...
Looser? What are you trying to say?
Interrupting me. Getting me out of my flow.
We've only just started and you're going down that path already, Brendan. Come on now.
It's less of a blueprint and I guess more of a guide, I suppose.
Yeah.
And this one is more aimed, I don't want to say corporate because that kind of like means like big, massive company, but we both work with bigger companies, not necessarily. Well, you could call them corporate. They might not call themselves corporate. But typically they have an in-house marketing person or a marketing department. So there are some commonalities we see when working with this particular type of client in terms of gaps and what they know, their awareness of the tool set and tactics and strategies available to them. And that's typically the kind of work we do. It's a bit more, I guess, I don't want to speak for you entirely, but it's a bit more consulting focused versus, I guess, the more tactical stuff. So, yeah. So in this episode, we'll cover, I guess, more of the tools available and some of the strategies and tactics around using those for internal marketing departments.
Fantastic. And so typically the size of those businesses will vary, but it's, I find the ones we're working with are usually between, in terms of employee size, somewhere between 5 to 50 staff, somewhere in that range. Turnovers somewhere in sort of $1 million to 10 million. Usually they're sitting in that space. So
even bigger, like, I guess the bigger they go, the more kind of consulting focused they are because we have that, bigger corporate entities with hundreds of staff and well over 100 million turnover as well. So, I wouldn't just limit it to the low end, but I guess,
But typically, and it's the same for us. We've got different size clients, but really the principles are the same really for any of them. So it just depends on who they've got in their staff that are taking care of this. And if they don't, then that's where they need to get someone external like us, Brendan. That's a plug. We don't do advertising. We just advertise ourselves. So what are we going to go for first? So the right sort of tool set to measure.
Well, let's start at the beginning. So typically these are people who have a marketing department or they have at least one marketing person who is making up the marketing department. Yeah. But they also have a sales team or a sales department or a team of sales personnel. What we very commonly see is, which is very strange, often the marketing and sales team are almost opposing each other. Like they're almost enemies and sometimes they're doing completely different things. Yeah. There's no bridge between the two of them. So
absolutely.
I guess as a broad strokes point that they need to be communicating because often marketing does their thing and then sales does their thing and they both complain about each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always found it funny that the common terminology that's used is sales and marketing. It should really be called marketing and sales because the marketing happens first, the sales happen second. So if what you're saying is right, which is often what we find as well, is if the marketing department and the sales department aren't on the same page, aren't working off the same strategy, then they've got this disjointed thing going on that ends up the results are nowhere near as good as they could be if they had the communication, like you said. So
yeah. So I think that's one is there really needs to be communication there. And I find it's really terrible, but I find often in the corporate space, the goal is often not so much focused on generating results or getting leads in the door or whatever it is. It's often to just spend the budget regardless of what the result is. So I think there's a couple of parts that I guess need to go into this. One is sales and marketing need to be on the same page and working off the same strategy and the same set of goals. And there needs to be some, I guess, tracking that works of leads or whatever, or tracking of activity and customers across both departments. And I think they really need to be clear on what the goals are there. So they need to get people in the door. They need to be handed off to sales in some clean fashion. They need to be tracked. And, they need to be tracked right through from the marketing point to the sales. So we need to, whether spending $100,000 this month on this advertising or this strategy or this channel, it's generated this many leads or inquiries or whatever it is. We have this many people in the CRM or the sales tracking system, and then this is what happened to them. And that needs to be, at a minimum, needs to be bought something or didn't buy something. We need to be able to see that ideally from start to finish, so we can say, well, this $100,000 spend created this many leads and this many of them bought, this many of them didn't. Yeah. And that's, at the basic framework for the tracking we're talking about, and this kind of cohesion where the marketing and sales teams work together as one, in effect.
Yeah, and so that's where we find it falls over quite often is we get the marketing side working and we get the traffic and we get the conversion in terms of, in this case, I'm referring to maybe lead generation. And the sales department, that's where their job is then to deal with that lead and follow up or make the conversion from the website into a real customer or whatever it is. And often that's where it falls over, and they're not tracking what's happening from that point. So,
yep. Because often things that happen in the sales space, people not converting or problems with the sale often originate in the marketing. There might be the wrong message. There might not be heavy enough. The qualifying and filtering can be done in the marketing end of things before it hits sales. Because sales is expensive. Like if we talk about, people are often confused what's the difference between sales and marketing. And one easy way to, there's lots of different ways to explain it, but one easy way that we use when talking with clients is marketing is one to many. So you're talking to many people as a broad group, whereas sales is more one-to-one. It's face-to-face with a customer. It's your company and the customer. So that's typically how an easy way to define it and understand the difference between the two.
Yes. I agree 100%, Brendan.
That's good.
So how do people put something in place to manage this? What's the best next step? Say at the beginning. So what do you recommend people use in terms of tracking? And there's so many different tools out there that people can use. A lot of them are relatively inexpensive to use, and others get into much higher costs. So depends on the size of business and what their outcomes are, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends. Like often there'll be something in place already that just needs a little bit of work to at least capture like the source of those leads, I guess. So typically sales teams have something in place that's tracking customers. And it's just a matter of, or I guess, kind of integrating that with marketing and marketing activities better. So you have kind of end-to-end visibility of what's happening with that customer prospect as they move through the sales process.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't have a good answer is, I guess, the bottom line, but ideally there needs to be some sort of CRM customer tracking system in place that can track the customer, where they came from, up until the point after which they bought, I guess.
Yeah. So that's where they could use something like Salesforce, or, I mean, that's a sort of fairly high-end platform, but something of a similar nature to be able to track those conversions.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of basic CMS systems out there that you can get.
Yeah, Zoho.
Salesforce Salesforce is a beast, right? Like
it is. Yeah, it's a very, very big platform with many different parts to it. So you got to start somewhere. And this is where I think it gets very confusing for people, because there are so many different options of what they can use out there. So you've got to find something that's going to fit your budget and ultimately what you're trying to get it to do. So, one that we often have clients that they're using is something like Zoho, which is pretty common CRM. Any others that you would suggest are worth looking at?
I know one, but I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of that entry level space, I guess, and plenty of them have a free trial where you can get in and play around. I guess it needs to be simple to use. Like it doesn't need to be super complex. And
no,
there is a tendency to go, Salesforce is what we use, but often like that $20 a month product will do the basic tracking that you need to do. Ultimately, I guess it depends on the size of the business, the length and complexity of the sales cycle as well, and also the dollar amount. You know, it's if a average sale size is $100,000 or $200,000, it's a lot different to if the average sale is $1,000. Like if there's more, there's more at risk, there's more to win, there's more buffer in there to be spending money on sales processes and tools and things like that.
Yep. So. Awesome.
Cool. So, okay, so now we got that out of the way. So, do you want to talk tactics next?
Yeah, we'll talk tactics. One of our favourite things, Tic Tacs. They're tasty and they keep your breath fresh. Oh, sorry, wrong thing. You're talking about tactics, not Tic Tacs. My bad.
That's terrible dad joke.
Yeah, terrible dad joke.
Off your game today, for sure. Should we start with the low-hanging fruit? We've got here a few things on the list, but I think Google Maps, Google Places, Apple Maps, and Bing Maps is probably, from my perspective, is usually done pretty badly by most of these corporate entities.
Yes.
And often they do have multiple offices or locations, and often they're franchises. So we do have several franchise clients where we're doing things like managing Maps listings, which is a huge deal, right?
It is, because if you don't look, everyone's using their mobile phones to look something up. So if the map layout and display isn't set up properly, and they're seeing inaccurate data or nothing at all because it hasn't been inputted properly by the business owner, or it may only just be showing the head office. I come across that a lot. There's 15 different branches, but all you get is the head office. We go, well, what the heck? How useful is that when I'm trying to find something in, a certain suburb? So, yeah, I don't know what it is, but people don't seem to give it the importance and the focus that it should have.
Yeah. I think particularly because it's for some of these businesses, the person coming to you and visiting you is probably one of the top 3 conversion elements, or the top 3 things you want the customer to do. So I think having every location on Google Maps at a minimum, having a review strategy in place, so you're getting reviews on those map listings, positive reviews, because as we know, they get more exposure. Once you have 5 reviews or more on each listing, it gets a star rating, which makes it stand out in the search results a lot more. Having a review management strategy in place, because it's inevitable you are going to get bad reviews at some point.
Yep.
No business exists without unhappy customers. It's just a fact of doing business.
Absolutely. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, I mean, we can't. It's just not realistic to stick your head in the sand and do nothing. So it's better to have a review management monitoring strategy in place than not. And then probably making sure that the data in those listings is up to date. You have good quality photos, and if they're retail locations, probably worth investing in Google Street View photography for inside each of those locations. So that means that I'm sure people, if you're listening, you know what Google Street View is. You go to the maps, you can see the 3D picture of the street or whatever.
Yep.
That is available for inside places as well. So you can get a Google trusted photographer, I think they're called. Yeah,
they're sort of like they're a partner, I suppose you would say.
Yeah.
Like you would be a Google AdWords or partner. They are authorized by Google to go and do the photography and do like the 360-degree shots inside and all that sort of stuff.
Yep. So I would say do that as because that can be quite costly. Like let's say, it might cost you $500 or $1,000 location. You can now do it. Google has something called Google Photosphere. We can DIY that. and the photos generally go live within 24 hours. So you can download the Photosphere app. It needs to be like a proper 360-degree photo. The app tells you how to take it. And that will start appearing on Google Street View. And we use that actually. That is quite good for where the Street View outside the physical location is out of date or it shows a different business. So we've had several clients where they're like, the Street View, we moved in here 2 years ago and it still shows the photo from the previous tenant with their signage and everything else. Yeah. So we have them take their phone out, do the Photosphere, and within kind of 24 hours, they have brand new. There's also the old Street View, but then it has the new Photosphere Street View there as well.
Yeah, and it's just like how you would do a panoramic shot on your phone. It just stitches it all together. You stand in one spot and turn in a circle, and it puts it all together. So it's pretty clever.
Yeah, technology, Ed, and it's free.
Technology, and it's the free. Yeah, that's even better. So that's an extra thing you can do if you don't have the budget to get someone to do it. So it's a very good tip.
Yeah, but I think that's a massive gap, and that's not just clients I see it with. It's just all businesses, even my own bank, and we're not talking about little businesses here when we're talking about banks. So that's a massive gap, and a lot of these companies are spending millions on TV ads, and yet something that's very relatively simple, like managing those locations, is done poorly. So that there's Google, then there's Bing, and then there's Apple Maps. Those would be obviously Google is probably the most important, and then
Apple
Maps,
then
Bing Maps.
Yeah, Bing. I'm sure there's someone out there using Bing Maps. I don't know.
Do you Bing it regularly, Ed?
I don't Bing anything, mate. Oh, seriously. I can't remember the last time I've used Bing. I do Bing advertising for some clients, and that gets pretty decent results. But in terms of maps and various things, here's look, 90% of people are out there. They're using Google as their search engine on their phone. Yeah. So that's what they're going to see, or they use the Apple Maps app. So
yeah, that one's one that's often forgotten, and we do get that with our clients from time to time that we have their maps listing and Apple decide to update it and the location's wrong. So
yeah, thing is you should be across all of them regardless, because it doesn't look good if someone does find it and it's incorrect, as you say, incorrect address or whatever it is. So just make sure the three of them are up to date.
Yeah, probably one more thing to add is having a page for each location on the website. So that's also important as well.
Yeah. So yeah, okay.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. Next. Then we've got things like Google AdWords.
You want to talk about AdWords? You're the Mr. AdWords in our relationship.
In our relationship.
In our relationship. In our podcasting.
That's lovely. So in terms of Google AdWords, that is an area that we find a lot of people, there's still, even 12, 13 years after AdWords has been around, not sure of the value of potentially using AdWords and are only focusing on SEO, which I think is a mistake, because they're missing out on a lot more opportunity with what they can get in front of with AdWords and the scope, because it's a lot harder, as you know, to be optimized for hundreds of keyword terms in SEO compared to the ability to set up an ad campaign in Google. It's a lot quicker. The results are a lot faster. Mm-hmm. And you have a lot more flexibility on what you can turn on and what you can turn off. So if you've got promotions or various locations that you want to promote differently, you can split those up. So we're talking about doing different maps for different locations, where you can set up different Google AdWords campaigns for different locations for your company. So they're not all going to operate exactly the same. So one location in WA may have something that they want to promote that's different to one in the eastern states. An example of that, and this is one that's happened several times, is if, as an example, there's a company that may be a windscreen repair company and they're based in Perth, and we have a hailstorm in Perth, then they want to be able to act and make sure their advertising can capture that initial instant reaction for people searching online if they've got damaged windscreens or windows, then they can tailor their ads very, very quickly in the matter of minutes to capture the demand for that input searches. So that's something you can't do with SEO because it would take too long for it to happen. You'd miss the opportunity. And the companies or the outlets in Melbourne and Sydney and wherever else aren't having that issue at the time because there's no hailstorms. So that's an example of being able to use AdWords to be flexible across different locations if you have a multi-branch business.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, more broadly, like you have more control, better accountability. It's faster than almost every other marketing channel you have, probably except for email marketing. And it's still, compared to other channels, it's still cheap. And it's still performance-based too, right? You don't pay unless someone clicks on an ad.
Exactly. And people sort of forget that you're not paying unless you get that visitor. Now, you want to get the right visitor, and that's where often a lot of issues happen as well. People aren't targeting the right people, and they're getting wasted clicks. So assuming that your campaign has been set up correctly and you are targeting the right end user or visitor that you want to get, the ideal client, then that advertising dollar is certainly going to get you further than typical traditional old versions of advertising like radio and yellow pages and TV. And they're in their death throes, a lot of these particular formats, because people aren't using them anymore. They're just not there. And
I think one thing that a lot of marketing departments struggle to get their head around is the difference between having to create demand and awareness and actually capturing active demand. Which I find that often some of the clients we work with struggle with that idea that people who are searching have active demand, and depending on the search term, they have varying levels of demand and intent. But it's very different. Your strategy needs to be different than just running for example, like a full-page newspaper ad. They're completely different people you're advertising to in a different buying state. So, it's some of that traditional advertising marketing approach that bigger businesses use doesn't translate well across to search, and that's often why they don't see the results they could possibly get. And you should never, these internal marketing departments should never be DIYing its own AdWords for starters. Just like it wouldn't DIY its own TV ads or something like that. But often they try to, which is a shame because they're really kind of kneecapping themselves.
Yeah, well, the simplicity of access is the thing that gives people that false sense of knowledge, because it's relatively easy just to go and open up a Google AdWords campaign, and there's quite a bit of guidance within on how to do it. But most people, they're only using sort of 5%, the tip of the iceberg. So, and the common mistakes that I often find when we're going in and setting up ad campaigns or fixing ad campaigns is that they're just doing all the rookie mistakes that are costing them money, targeting the wrong keyword terms, basic settings set up so it's just not being effective. So, and that costs you, and quite often people will then base their whole experience of AdWords on their inexperience, and then they say AdWords doesn't work, which is crazy. So you've got to really give it the right amount of time, and people give up too quickly. They'll try it for a few weeks and go, blah blah blah, didn't get enough traffic. But again, it comes down to there's a whole combination of things they didn't have set up correctly, and they didn't give it enough time. So get the right people to do it, that's for sure.
Yep. So, that's AdWords for search, right? Do we want to talk about SEO?
We do. Of course we want to talk about SEO, Brendan.
Yeah. So, it's funny. There's a lot of SEO has changed, just like AdWords has. These tools and technologies evolve very quickly over time. And an approach to something that worked 5 years ago is not going to work today. Probably the biggest mistake in corporate land and that I see marketing departments make is thinking that SEO is quick and that someone can actually guarantee results. They can't. because they don't really have ultimate control. You could probably guarantee some sort of result in AdWords, but I don't think you do an SEO. And probably the other big mistake is focusing on keywords first instead of focusing on what products and services you want to sell. So we changed our strategy a few years ago to have clients. So people come along and they want to rank for some keyword. I want to be number one for this term, and it just doesn't. That approach doesn't work anymore. It doesn't make sense in today's world anymore because it's not outcome focused. It doesn't start with what do we want to sell and working backwards from there. So that if I could give one piece of SEO advice to someone listening who is working on a marketing team, it's that the first step in any SEO campaign is sit down, make a list of what you actually want to sell and prioritize that list. So that would be the first step. Forget about keywords, forget about anything else. What do you actually want to sell? So the second step of that is you need a page for every one of those products and services you want to sell. Without a page, you can't rank. It's such simple logic. You cannot rank for a term that you don't have content for on the website. And there are exceptions. There are ways to get around it that are dodgy. There would be black hat, but we're talking about corporate marketing here. Logic, stuff that actually works. You absolutely have to have a standalone page for every one of those products and services. Without that, you have zero chance of ranking. You shouldn't even be looking at competitors. Like people start looking at competitors and see what they're doing. It's completely wrong. It's like start with what do you want?
Yeah,
want to sell. Do you have a page for each one of those? I mean, that's step one. Like that's the only place you can start with SEO today, I think.
100%. And I say it all the time. Like we've got a new client who's a law firm, and they did not have separate pages for the sort of 4 or 5 main areas that they were trying to attract clients for. They had a page that had them all listed. It had a picture, and it had the main sort of wording of what that particular service was, and that was all on one page for all of them, and there was no more content. Like there was nothing. So I'm going, well, first of all, how is Google supposed to know anything about that? And second of all, when the visitor gets there, if they ever get there, which would be a miracle, then there's nothing for them to read about what the service is or give any explanation of what's on offer. So logic seems to go out the door in terms of a lot of stuff we see on websites. So, even I know you're saying it's obvious and logical, and I think the same, but we do often forget that when people are so close to their websites and it's sort of blocking the view, can't see the forest for the trees per se, for want of a better analogy. So, but
it's easy for us to say that. Now, I know our own website for the search engine shop is missing pages that need to be on there.
Same here. Absolutely. Guilty as charged. We don't always do the things that we know we should be because we're busy doing it for everybody else. So, but that's not an excuse, and it's not an excuse for anybody that if you want to get the results, you've got to put in those things in place to get them. So easy peasy, and it makes it easier for advertising as well. So you send in the Google AdWords traffic to the page that's relevant for what the person has searched on, not just sending them to the homepage or to a services page that has a whole list of things for people to try and find. That's just crazy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. So SEO, start with the products and services you want to sell. You've got to have a page of content for each one of those products and services. You've got to have a page for each of your locations. You've got to be in Google Maps. And then you need links back to the site, and they really, in today's world, it's very hard to shortcut that process and speed it up. I wouldn't expect to be seeing significant results before 3 months with a new SEO campaign. You might get some quick wins, but there's a risk there. If you do shortcut things or do dodgy things, Google will penalize you and when we say penalize, they give you a ranking penalty, so they'll rank you lower down on purpose because you've broken the rules, and they've detected that. So there's a lot of risk with doing dodgy things, and especially when you have companies that are guaranteeing rankings and things like that, then you may run into less than above board tactics. So.
Yeah, and we've had that on a joint client we've been working with, who will remain nameless, who had a website that was basically having SEO done by some dodgy crew that were based, I'm not sure. I'm not just going to say India for putting it on India's sake, but I think they actually were in India. But it was done through a local company that outsourced a lot of their stuff to an Indian crew. And a lot of really dodgy SEO stuff. And when we say dodgy, it was having links coming from other websites of disrepute in terms of Google's eyes, or ill repute. Is disrepute a word? I just maybe made that up. But anyway, and we, you and I, mainly you in this regard, because it was the stuff you're doing for SEO, it wasn't fixable because it had been damaged for too long and was too entrenched. So we sort of had to start again. So, and that's often what people are going to face if they've had a lot of crap done on their websites in terms of bad SEO and bad link backs. Then it may be easier for people to scrap it, as painful as that may seem, and start all over with a fresh slate and get it done properly.
Yep. Cool.
Bummer.
I think there's enough SEO, right?
Oh, it's never enough SEO. We just talk SEO all the time, Brendan. But yes, we'll move on to the next thing.
All right.
So we've mainly the things we've been talking about there. So AdWords and SEO. And we didn't really talk about the Google Display Network, but that's Google AdWords as well, using advertising.
I do have a separate bullet point for that.
Separate bullet point. Okay, so we'll go on to that then, because towards the end we're going to be talking about basic conversion optimization, and the conversion optimization comes after the traffic. So the next couple of points are still traffic focused. So are you happy talking about the basic conversion optimization at the end?
Yep, sure.
All right, so we'll skip Google because Google's getting way too much attention. We haven't even talked about Facebook yet, and poor Facebook. They need, they're getting so much attention and leverage these days, and becoming a massive player in the paid advertising space, which I think you and I always felt was going to happen eventually.
Well, we're talking about two. All right, so we've talked about search engines, which is about capturing active demand.
Yep. I call it the scratch. They want to scratch their itch, so they sit down and type something in. So that's an instant satisfaction thing that they have. So,
yep.
Whereas Facebook advertising is something different, which you're going to talk about now.
So yeah, the other side of that is people who don't have active demand. So they need to be made aware of your product or service or your new solution, whatever it is.
Yep.
Or where you need to kind of stoke the fires of demand. Like you have to make them actively want your stuff. Like you might have a new deal or a new promo, or they might, if you were doing a certain discount or certain offer, then they might actually be interested in it. So
cool. Yep.
So that's where I think being clear that one is about capturing demand and one is about creating demand or creating awareness. So different tools for different jobs, right? So that's where we look at Facebook ads and Google Display Network. Yeah. So Facebook advertising, it's getting in front of people. Facebook advertising is probably closer to television advertising than anything else that exists today. On top of also YouTube advertising, because people who are in their Facebook stream, and I don't know what the average is now, but not long ago it was most people are spending at least 30 minutes a day on Facebook, which is pretty scary. So they're getting exposed to that constant stream, and particularly with video advertising now with Facebook, that's really getting a huge bit of traction because people just can't help it. Yeah, and the sneaky thing with Facebook video advertising is the video is playing. You're not hearing the sound, but you're seeing the video, so automatically sort of hooks you in. Mm-hmm. So and plus the ads that are running in the side panel, etc., in the sidebar. So there's all sorts of ways that people are getting exposed to ads in Facebook, and if it's done correctly and you're targeting your marketplace correctly within the parameters of Facebook for the demographics, then it's such a powerful way to get traffic. So, because Facebook's sneaky, we know all the bits and pieces about people, what they do, what they had for breakfast, how old they are, where they live, whether they're getting married or divorced, or, they're all talking about this stuff. That's the thing. People, when they sign up for Facebook, it makes me laugh, the 20-page,
agreement that you have to sign before you sign up for your account. Basically, you're giving Facebook access to all of this stuff. This is all their content. Your content is technically their content. And they can use it pretty much how they like based on what you've just signed. So this is why you're getting advertised to all the time.
Yeah.
And people complain. I go, well, hey, look, if you don't like it, don't use Facebook. But if you're going to use Facebook, this is what's happening, and this will continue to happen. And it's happening even more. And you're going to get, there's going to be more advertising bombarding you on a daily basis.
Yep.
So,
yeah, it's the way of the modern world. But there's also, let's not forget, there are other platforms that do advertising: Twitter, LinkedIn, basically anywhere there's eyeballs today. There are ads.
Absolutely,
online.
Yep. And they're all adapting very quickly, in particularly adapting for the mobile market space, which has been one of the biggest challenges, is how to get in front of people on mobile, because they've got a smaller real estate space that people are looking at, and they're getting more intuitive now. And it's interesting though, because I was watching one of my YouTube videos, channels that I watch, and at the start, the guy was saying, just a little side note, if you're watching this video and you enjoy the content, if you could switch off your ad blockers, because it's how this channel makes money. Ad blockers are becoming a big issue with these types of social media advertising, because people are going, I'll just install an ad blocker system on my phone, and it's getting rid of a lot of the advertising that's popping up. So this is a constant challenge that we have with social media advertising.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, what are our takeaways here? Use these channels for creating demand, creating awareness. You really need, if your market is not there, there's no point being in the channel. So if you're a doctor, what was the problem you had? Gonorrhea in the last episode?
I didn't have it.
Yes, that was your example.
It was an example that someone had. I didn't say I had it.
Well, that was the example you used. So if you're
Brendan, that's terrible. How embarrassing.
Advertising gonorrhea treatments, maybe Facebook's not the place for that.
No, and that was probably not a great example, but it probably got a bit of attention. So, but that's the thing, and it is an example. You're not going to be, you're not going to be discussing necessarily a lot of your very personal things that happen on Facebook that could be health related, or some people do, some people don't care, but there are limitations with what you can use on Facebook.
Yeah. So, and the audience has to be there, right? Probably need to be aware that there's some ad burnout as well. You can't just run the same ads forever, just like print advertising, right? Yeah,
we all see it. I've got some stuff that I just keep switching off all the time because I keep seeing the same crap from the same people. So, okay, no, this is just bad. And so, your target market has to be where you on these platforms. So if you're not doing your research properly to find out if they're on these platforms, then what's the point of putting all the time and effort into setting up advertising on them if there's no one going to see them? So,
True. Cool. So, anything else to add? Any more thoughts there?
No, that's it.
Good thing. All right. So, should we talk about basic conversion optimization?
We should indeed. So this is one of the things that is frustrating in terms of people not thinking about it. They spend all the time and energy on their advertising on Google, on Facebook, and then they send them through to a terrible website or a terrible landing page that is not designed to convert that traffic that you just spent money on getting. So they don't have a forward strategy in place to deal with that traffic and put them in some type of sales funnel. Yep. And the thing I find that is probably lacking most with all of the advertising that's done is I'll just send them through to a generic page that it could be about this, the keyword term or the subject that people have just typed on or searched on, I should say, and that's better than just sending them to the homepage. But it's just a generic information page. There isn't any call to action. That's always a very big lacking area. So what do you find with that's lacking?
Well, I think I guess step one, be clear about what you want the visitor to do, right? like an easy one is like medical and dental practices, right?
Yeah.
So like, what do you want the visitor to the website to do? Like really one of only a few things. One is pick up the phone and call you.
Yep.
Send an email or send a contact form request. Book online. Really you need like a real-time booking system if you're booking people online. So some sort of book online, reserve, whatever it is, or buy online even. And then come to you physically, so your physical location. So for that type of business, then you've got 4 conversion points, so phone, email, visit, book. And the website really needs to be built around that. So on the homepage, it probably is wise to have those 4 elements there, and menu items for those 4 elements, and probably phone number in the header on the website, probably a book online button in the header of the website.
Yeah.
Be clear if someone, because there's a common mistake that a lot of people make, that you assume all the visitors are coming through the homepage, which more often than not, they're coming through another page, an inside page first, like the services page you talked about. So they search for in your example, the gonorrhea treatment. So the gonorrhea treatment page.
This will haunt me forever.
What happens then? Is there a book online form at the bottom of that page, or does it say to schedule an appointment about your gonorrhea problem?
Yeah, or buy buy this gonorrhea cream that will solve that's nasty. Okay, so yeah, but think of what it's like when you go to a website that doesn't give you the next step. And that's basically what we're talking about. The next step is phone, fill in the contact form, download a free report, order a product. Here's the link. Buy now. You're saying, right, here's the information. This is what we offer. Here's the next step. And if you don't have a next step, if they're left at a dead end road and they've read all this stuff or looked at information and there's no clear next step, how are they supposed to engage with you and buy your product or book your service? It seems, again, another very obvious thing, but it is hugely lacking in a lot of websites we see, both e-commerce sites or service-based sites.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Regardless, always you need to keep the customer in the loop. What's the next step? And there's easy ways to see gaps in your own systems. One is, we do this with e-commerce businesses. Have the business owner go through the checkout, or we do it for them, and you can see there's massive gaps often, and easy wins. The other one is we've talked about on other episodes, tools like Lucky Orange, where you can actually see videos of the visitors on the website, and you could watch 10 of those videos.
Just to be clear, we're not actually seeing the person who's on the website.
No.
We're seeing their activity on the website. Just in case people were freaking out and go, oh my God.
Not their webcam.
We're switching on their webcam and watching them sit there half naked while they search through your e-commerce website. We're not talking about that. Awesome. No. Just wanted to be clear.
Yes, probably a good point. But yeah, I mean, you can see stuff. You can see the mouse movements. You can see them scrolling up and down. They're moving their mouse. You can see a lot of stuff, which can be quite freaky when you've never seen that before. But
yeah, it is very, very spy-like. But your identity as a person, you don't. All they know is the tracking and IP address, but they don't know who you are. Yep. They know what you're doing as a user, though. That's the thing. So. So that's where remarketing and various other things are all putting tracking codes in your browser.
Yep.
And get to have all this information be available to us as marketers, which is wonderful.
Yep. So do you want to talk about remarketing? Because that kind of ties into conversion. Remarketing and email marketing are probably closely related in a sense, I suppose, that we should probably touch on briefly.
Yeah, well, in terms of remarketing, which we've spoken about before, it's the ability to get back in touch with visitors that you would potentially have lost who come to the site, don't take any of the expected or preferred actions, and then they leave. And that's 96% of visitors typically across websites on the internet. So when they come through and we've got what we call a remarketing cookie, so that tracking code that I mentioned earlier is on your website, and it will then put that tracking code on the visitor's browser, which will then enable us to show them advertising at a specific time or place in the future to bring them back to the site if it was a missed opportunity. And it could be because they were on an e-commerce site and they had they didn't. They exited the shopping cart, so we can put tracking codes on there to get them back. All sorts of combinations. We can set up very specific custom audiences, so we can target just particular pages on the site. We can target the home page. We can target the shopping cart. All sorts of variations of how we can get back in front of the visitor. So that is one way. So remarketing is a very popular way, and getting even more popular as time goes by for doing that, picking up those missed opportunities. But then, of course, there's a good old steadfast, been around forever email marketing side, which is a different way of getting back in front of people. So I'll let you talk about email marketing, Brendan.
Yeah, well, I guess email marketing in the corporate space is often done pretty poorly, and it's done very corporate-like, which often is not very effective. So we have a whole episode around email marketing, but I guess probably the biggest one is to be personal. So write it as if you're writing to one, even though you might be a big corporate company, you still need to be writing it as if, well, the most effective email is going to be a one-on-one kind of style. So the email written as if it's being written to one person, not being sent to 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's probably the number one thing to do. And just take out all the corporate noise over formatting. Like the closer to a personal email that your email marketing seems like, the more effective it's generally going to be, because when you email someone personally from your mailbox, you might include an attachment as a picture, but you're not going to include a bunch of formatting. It's not going to be laid out like a magazine. It's not going to be hugely complex. Now, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, the more simple the formatting, the better. If it's written on the one-on-one style, the better.
Yeah.
But generally, email marketing is almost always underdone or done poorly by big organizations. So it generally is probably the cheapest marketing channel you have, because the cost to send 100,000 emails is $100 maybe in some time, or a couple of $100 for an email tool. And it's easy to capture emails off a website. So, I don't know how deep you want to go into it, but I think we have a whole episode on it, so we can reference that in the show notes, I think, if someone wants to dig deeper on it.
I think that'd be wise, because it is quite a deep subject, like all of the different components we've talked about, which we can link to for further details and in-depth stuff. But in terms of email marketing, most people do it incorrectly, as far as I'm concerned anyway, because what you don't want when you get on an email marketing list, and it's very difficult to get, first of all, people to opt into an email list these days. It's harder and harder to get that happening. And then you've got to compete with all the noise in their inbox from everyone else who's trying to get their attention. So you've really got to come from a perspective of providing high value in your emails. So they're going to want to read them, not just pitching them something straight off the bat, which is what I get all the time. You go, oh crap, here we go. I've signed up to get some good stuff, and now they're just pitching me an event that's coming up, or a new product launch or something. So, and people just go, and then they hit the unsubscribe button, and you've wasted all that time. So, whereas if they keep getting stuff from you that's beneficial to them, and they'll keep reading it, then when you do have something to put forward, you've got a much better chance of getting that across the line.
Yeah. Probably the one more thing I'd add is don't send it from a no reply email address. That's nuts. People want to reply to emails, invite them to reply, and have the email reply actually go to somebody.
Good point. Yeah. That is a big thing that annoys me, is you get those, and it's just complete. First of all, it completely loses any personal touch that was perceived, and limits the person, as you said, to be able to get back and respond. You want to be able to have that two-way interaction. Yeah,
I mean, in today's world, there's technology available, so that those responses can go to customer service and they can be handled appropriately.
Yep.
So should we recap quickly?
Go for it.
All right, so what have we talked about? We've talked about maps listing on the 3 major maps platforms for all physical locations, so Google, Apple, and Bing.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about AdWords, so Google AdWords for search, Google's paid advertising platform in the search engines, and generally is cheaper, faster, more versatile, more controlled than more traditional advertising channels like TV, print, radio. We have talked about SEO. So SEO has really changed over the last few years. So the keyword approach is kind of outdated. Keywords are important, yes, but it's not the starting point. You should be really starting with what the focus is. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to sell?
Yep.
We have broadly talked about display ads. So Google Display Network, Facebook ads, and then LinkedIn, Twitter, all that sort of stuff. And really the idea there is the people need to be on the platform, or your prospects need to be on that platform, and it really is about raising awareness, creating demand as opposed to capturing it. What else we talked about? We've talked about basic or conversion optimization basics. So simple stuff, being clear about what you want the customer to do when they get to the website. And a tool like Lucky Orange and even live chat, we didn't talk about that, but we had a whole episode about live chat and how you can use that strategically to see what's going on the website. So we'll link up to that. That's a very cheap way of uncovering easy wins with the site. And then we just ranted about email marketing for the last
ranted. We didn't rant. Well, in that case, that was what we did for the whole episode, because it's stuff that we are constantly having to get across to our clients. So, and think of your marketplace and things you take for granted and things that you just sort of automatically know because you've been doing them for X amount of years. And that's typically what we find is this stuff seems like it would be common knowledge to us, but it's not, which is one of the reasons we're doing the podcast. So a lot of these basic things are just being completely missed. So, people make assumptions because it's a big size company that they have all this sort of stuff locked down, but quite often they're the worst offenders because they're very slow to adapt, and they have often a lack of internal communication between, as we said from the beginning, the marketing team and the sales team. So,
the thing about these points as well, like in a small business, they might not necessarily be a huge shift in the needle, but for a bigger business that has its own marketing team or sales team, they're fairly small things, but because of the scale of the business, this might be a $50 million business. So a 5%, 10% win from a sales and marketing perspective in a business of that size is pretty substantial. So while a small business might, discount the benefit of the, really refining down like maps listings and, having really high quality photos on there, a bigger business would see a much bigger benefit from, that real attention to detail. So, I mean, it's easy for us to spend an hour and rattle off these points like they're nothing and it takes an hour to implement them. But like even something as simple as getting maps listings lined up in a franchise business or a big business that's 10 or 20 locations, that could easily be a 3-month project just to get that up to a basic bare minimum standards. So, I mean, you could take up, any one of these points and make it a 3-month project in a bigger business quite easily and see really significant results, like, benefit in the millions. So, they might be easy to discount at face value, but I think if you really, and we have episodes on most of these. So, I mean, if you're listening and you're kind of thinking, that doesn't really matter, but when you take the scale of that business into account, they actually can make a huge difference. So. Yep.
Incremental changes can have a big impact at the end. So don't discount those fractional improvements along the way, because exponentially they add up. So. Awesome, dude. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you for bringing up the gonorrhea subject again. It was very helpful.
Hey, that was you who started that.
No, it wasn't. No, you told me to say it in that other episode. You said, Ed, I dare you to say.
That is a lie.
Don't believe him, people. He's a bad influence on me.
I'm a nice guy, Ed.
I know you are. That. You're a lovely guy, Brendan. So thanks, mate. Appreciate your time as always. And thank you, the listener, for listening. You may have switched off a long time ago as soon as you mentioned the gonorrhea. But anyhow, we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks, mate.
See ya.
You've been listening to The Business Marketing Show. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher.